Tonight, Donald Trump prepares for a historic return to the White House, while Kamala Harris urges her supporters to keep fighting for America's future.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Fernandez. This is ABC News. World leaders react to the election result and how it could reshape global policies and international relations. The federal government's plan to ban children under the age of 16 from social media, and the major deal that'll change Australia's pharmaceutical industry. Donald Trump has spent his first day as the United States president-elect largely out of the public eye and taking calls of congratulations from world leaders and his defeated opponent. His emphatic political comeback is being hailed not only as a historic victory, but also a transformational force that'll reshape the future of America. We have correspondents throughout the United States unpacking the appeal behind the Republicans' election-winning pitch. Jade McMillan begins our coverage with the flood of support in Trump's home state of Florida.
Celebrations in the streets for an historic victory. Donald Trump's supporters flocked to his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida.
First thing I did is cry. Tears of happiness. We won!
Trump won!
We couldn't keep our excitement to ourselves. So I said, let's go to Mar-a-Lago, and he said, okay.
What had been tipped to be a very close race was instead a decisive win. Donald Trump's son Eric sharing a behind-the-scenes snapshot of the moment before the 45th president addressed the nation about becoming the 47th.
Hey, look what happened. Is this crazy?
Donald Trump repeatedly insulted Kamala Harris on the campaign trail. But when the vice president called to congratulate him, a spokesman said he acknowledged her strength, professionalism and tenacity. The man who replaced him 4 years ago also reached out to commit to a smooth and peaceful transition of power.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
The president-elect made the economy and immigration central to his campaign, promising major new tariffs on imports and the largest mass deportation of undocumented immigrants in US history. When Donald Trump was first elected in 2016, he was a political outsider. This time, he has experience and a much better understanding of how to achieve his goals, as well as what he describes as a powerful mandate. Implementing his agenda has been made easier after Republicans took control of the Senate. The House of Representatives is still too close to call.
What I'm most impressed by is not just the size of the victory, I know the number's still growing, but the way Donald Trump won this election. He won it by fundamentally remaking the Republican Party.
The first ever convicted felon to be elected president is supposed to be sentenced on the New York hush money charges later this month. But it's unclear whether that will go ahead, and the federal cases against him are reportedly being wound down. Another win in the eyes of his many backers. Jade McMillan, ABC News, West Palm Beach.
A defiant and dignified Kamala Harris has conceded defeat to Donald Trump. Her speech to supporters at Howard University in Washington was part rallying cry and part pep talk.
It was to have been a big outdoor party. Instead, it felt more like a wake.
Folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it.
Kamala Harris confirmed she'd conceded defeat, getting in a dig at her opponent.
When we lose an election, we accept the results.
Then came a rallying call.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
This was fighting talk from the Vice President, but within the Democratic Party, the soul-searching and the recriminations are just beginning. It must ask itself who or what is to blame for this bitter loss and why its vision for the future of this country did not speak to more Americans.
This should have been a landslide victory, and it wasn't.
And the Democrats need to do a better job of reaching working class voters.
As the post-mortem continues, there will also be talk of how, as sitting Vice President, Kamala Harris struggled to differentiate herself from an unpopular administration.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
And the former prosecutor often struggled to articulate her positions.
To understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
Celebrities lined up to endorse her.
Let's go, Kamala!
But all to no avail.
She gave her all, and that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just devastated.
Preparations for Donald Trump's inauguration have already begun as Kamala Harris returns to her day job as deputy to the man she replaced. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Washington.
Mr. Trump enters his second term as President of the US in a vastly different domestic and global environment to his first in 2016. Here's our Global Affairs editor, John Lyons.
This is, without doubt, an emphatic victory by Donald Trump. But having pulled off one of the most remarkable political comebacks in modern times, Trump is now in full control of the Republican Party and will wield huge influence over the Senate and the House. With powerful backers such as Elon Musk, Trump will now set about implementing his agenda: smaller government, less regulation, a tougher border policy, a crackdown on crime, more support for Israel, less support for Ukraine, and a much more aggressive stance towards China, using tariffs as a weapon. He may also target institutions he's claimed set out to destroy him, such as the US Department of Justice. This is likely to be 4 years like we've never seen before. The world is about to see the true nature of Trump's America.
Donald Trump's decisive win was aided by a surprising increase in support from African Americans. Latinos and other low-income households hit hardest by inflation also helped fuel his victory.
Days ago, Adriana Zapata was a hopeful campaigner for Kamala Harris, even hosting the vice president at a Mexican restaurant in August.
It was just such an elated, happy moment.
But today, she watched her concede, knowing many within her community voted for Donald Trump.
Aprobado el menudo.
Adriana says Donald Trump's message on the economy cut through to Latinos, but especially his tough stance on immigration.
People who have gained citizenship or a right to be in the country legally, they know the struggle they went through to obtain that.
Latino men were among one of the biggest gains for Donald Trump.
I trust Donald Trump more than any other president we've had.
I did vote for Donald Trump, personally not because of who he is, but his policies that align with mine.
But for others, Trump's threat of mass deportations cuts deep.
A lot of Latino men have come here to the United States to seek a better life, so some have established themselves, and it seems that they have forgotten about their roots.
Here in Arizona, some within the Latino community say for too long politicians have treated them as if they're one homogenous monolith. This result shows the diversity in their political leanings, but also in their lived experience and values.
Hallelujah. As justice in this world prevails yet again.
Trump also gained votes among young black men who feel taken for granted by the Democratic Party.
Black lives don't matter to them. Black votes matter to them.
But here too, Trump's promises of a better economy hit home.
You know, when Trump was in office, some of my sons have their own business, and they seen that their business flourished.
A new generation with new voting habits. Isabella Hickens, ABC News, Phoenix.
In Canberra, the Prime Minister has spoken to President-elect Donald Trump to congratulate him on his victory. The federal government's now anticipating what Trump's return to power will mean for security, trade and investment. Here's National Affairs editor Melissa Clark.
Donald Trump is headed back to the White House. And like his predecessors, Anthony Albanese will face an unpredictable US president.
No, I look forward to working with President Trump.
Assuming the volatility of his first term is replicated second time around.
President Trump has campaigned on change. We shouldn't be surprised if there is change.
Trump's vow to impose tariffs on imports is the immediate concern, as it would affect Australia's direct exports to the US and China's exports made with Australian resources.
We're a trading nation and we will continue to be advocates for free and fair trade.
Both Labor and the Coalition are optimistic Trump will back the AUKUS Defence Pact and Australia's acquisition of nuclear submarine technology.
AUKUS is providing increased capability across both our nations.
But Trump's commitment to the Paris Agreement is far less certain, given he pulled out of the Climate Change Pact last time he was in the Oval Office. The federal government saying if that happens, it won't change Australia's stance.
We're going to have to be able to prosper in a world where much of the global economy is moving to net zero.
Ambassador Kevin Rudd has been working hard to build connections with the Republicans, despite his and Anthony Albanese's sharp words about Trump in the past.
He scares the shit out of me.
We will make sure, Mr Speaker, that President Trump is not somebody to be scared of, but somebody that we can work very closely with.
The PM and the President-elect spoke on the phone today, and in the call, Trump described Australia and America as perfect friends, a congenial start. But the real work begins after Trump's inauguration in January, when the ritual courtesies give way to realpolitik. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.
Europe will be watching closely to see what ramifications Donald Trump's victory will have on the war in Ukraine, along with security and trade. During the campaign, Mr Trump claimed he could end the war in 24 hours.
While the world stopped to watch the US presidential race, Russia's offensive in Ukraine pressed on. Trump's victory met with mixed reactions.
He will certainly try to reach a deal with Putin.
We will have to give up the territories. He will try to convince us.
They have plenty of money.
Trump has promised a quick end to the conflict.
I will have that war settled in one day.
But many fear a hasty peace deal would force Ukraine to cede land to Russia. The Ukrainian leader, nonetheless, wishing Trump well.
Today is truly a special day. I congratulate him on his victory.
Moscow withheld its congratulations, calling the US an unfriendly country.
Our president doesn't trust him much, so I think nothing will change.
Trump's victory is undoubtedly more promising for us in terms of ending military action in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Europe's leaders lined up to welcome the president-elect.
I look forward to working with him in the years to come.
Germany will remain a reliable transatlantic partner.
The United States is a major contributor to NATO, the security pact that defends much of Europe. Donald Trump has previously toyed with the idea of pulling out, accusing members of not paying their way.
In the wake of his victory, French and German defence ministers urged NATO nations to boost contributions. Europe's leaders will be meeting in Budapest to talk security.
We cannot afford any capability gaps in our ability to defend ourselves in Europe.
Calls for unity now sounding more urgent, with Trump set to take the reins once more in the new year. Catherine Diss, ABC News, London.
One of the key challenges Mr Trump will have to tackle as president is the US relationship with Israel and its president, Benjamin Netanyahu, along with the ongoing conflict in both Gaza and Lebanon. Here's Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran.
Benjamin Netanyahu needs Donald Trump. It's a pretty simple equation. The US remains the largest donor of military aid to Israel, and Israel's stockpiles are severely depleted given its continuing wars in Gaza and in Lebanon. Benjamin Netanyahu also knows Donald Trump is very popular among the Israelis he needs to prop up support for his government. And it's not necessarily a case that a new US president would turn off the tap, would stop that flow of aid, but Donald Trump is likely to drive a far harder bargain. He is, as he continues to tell us, a businessman after all, and shipping a seemingly never-ending supply of weapons to this part of the world is unlikely to be seen as a smart investment. He may well give the Netanyahu government a bit more freedom to figure out how to end the wars, but will insist a conclusion needs to be found. And with death tolls of more than 43,000 in Gaza and more than 3,000 in Lebanon, that deadline can't come soon enough. Although Donald Trump's plans, once the wars have finished, are unclear.
Coming up on 7:30, Sarah Ferguson interviews the legendary journalist Bob Woodward about the new US president-elect.
As President of the United States, will Donald Trump rise to the occasion? If he falls to the occasion and does some of the things that he has threatened to do, then we are in for one of the darkest periods of U.S. history and world history.
People aged under 16 will be banned from accessing social media under laws set to land in federal parliament within weeks. The federal government says it's acting on the concerns of parents worried about what their children are seeing online. But social media companies say enforcing a ban wouldn't be straightforward.
Australia is
Plenty of young people love social media, and social media loves them back. It's a relationship the Prime Minister wants to break up.
And this one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Apps like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X and YouTube are set to be banned for people under 16 years old.
The onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people.
We would like to see not only the legislation introduced this year, we would like to see the legislation pass the Parliament this year.
The platforms are already pushing back. Facebook and Instagram's parent company warning, what's missing is a deeper discussion on how we implement protections. While tech industry body Digi says to enforce a blunt ban, all Australians would have to provide their personal information, such as an ID or an image of their face, to verify their age.
We're not really hearing those granular details yet from the Albanese government about how this is going to work.
Among young people who've grown up with social media, views are mixed.
I don't know if it should be banned, but I think there should be more restrictions.
I don't think all social media is bad. I just think it should be very heavily limited.
It's just really easy to bully people on social media.
A ban is both blunt and imperfect. There's little doubt some young people will find a way around it. But the government argues it will, at the very least, empower anxious parents to say no to teenagers, insisting all their friends are online. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
A video of William Tyrrell's foster mother being interrogated at the New South Wales Crime Commission has been played at the inquest into the 3-year-old's disappearance. The video showed the foster mother being questioned in 2021 when it was put to her that she disposed of William's body after he fell from a balcony at the home on the Mid-North Coast in 2014. She repeatedly denied any involvement in his disappearance. The video was the final piece of evidence tendered at the inquest, which resumed this week to probe the most recent police theory that the foster mother may have covered up his accidental death. The inquest will resume for closing submissions in December before a coroner delivers her findings next year. The Premier and his cabinet have arrived in Broken Hill, where they're meeting locals who are still reeling from the recent power outages. State political reporter Nick Dole is there. Nick, Chris Minns is taking questions tonight at a community forum. How is he being received?
Hi Jeremy, well about 200 or more people have turned up to this meeting and it's been respectful so far, but Chris Minns acknowledges that this community is burning, in his words. It's been 3 weeks since a massive storm came through and took out those transmission towers, cutting more than 10,000 residents off from the grid. Now, Transgrid's generator, its backup generator, one of them didn't work, the other one was out for maintenance, and so that has caused extreme frustration in the community. The power's back on, but many lost thousands. Just $200 is available for individuals, $400 for businesses, and that hasn't even been claimable until today. But some of the frustration that's been coming through this evening from community members has also focused on the lack of emergency resources here in Broken Hill and also the lack of early warnings.
We don't have a weather radar anywhere near us in Broken Hill.
Suddenly, there's a disaster, there's nobody on the ground because everyone's in Sydney.
The power outage was absolutely outrageous. There is no justification for it. I understand the community is burning about it, that businesses have been left out of pocket, that some people have been put in very precarious situations.
And the Premier's again taken aim at Transgrid for not having enough backup systems in place. He says a parliamentary inquiry will also try to get to the bottom of this issue, but he has acknowledged that politicians in the city often treat places like Broken Hill with a bit of a out of sight, out of mind philosophy, and he says politicians in the capital city need to do better.
Nick Dole reporting live from Broken Hill. Stations along one of Sydney's oldest railways have transformed as its conversion for driverless metro trains steams ahead. Just over a month into the closure of the T3 line, significant progress has been made. The project is already on the cusp of a major milestone.
The race is on to bring a 19th century railway into the 21st century.
Most mums and dads out there know how hard to renovate a house is. Imagine renovating a 130-year-old line and what you find.
Hundreds of sliding doors will prevent passengers falling into the path of the driverless metro trains. More than a third have been erected.
You'll be able to enjoy a drink and use public transport rather than having to worry about driving home.
Wherever the platform is curved, something called a mechanical gap filler is fitted to stop people slipping between it and the carriage.
Is a step-free level boarding that's accessible to everybody.
The T3 line between Bankstown and Sydenham shut at the end of September. The conversion is scheduled to take 12 months. But the state government has been lowering expectations, warning it could take longer.
It's the hardest project in the world and I love it.
If all goes to plan, the first metro train will pass through here over the summer as part of a rigorous testing regime to ensure one of Sydney's oldest railways can handle the city's newest trains.
We've got a plan to do that within the next couple of months.
A light at the end of the metro tunnel for the thousands of commuters now forced to catch buses. Alexander Lewis, ABC News, Sydney.
The consumer watchdog has approved a deal that'll see Chemist Warehouse become the largest pharmaceutical retailer in Australia. The merger with the wholesaler Sigma Healthcare will create an $8.8 billion pharmaceutical giant, which would operate nearly 1,000 stores. The ACCC says the alliance wouldn't substantially reduce competition, but it has slapped conditions on the merger, asking for an independent auditor and for pharmacies to be allowed to switch suppliers and have their data deleted. Let's take a look at finance now. Here's Alan Kohler.
In the US markets right now, it's all about what they're calling the Trump trades, and there's a few of them. So let's go. The big banks like Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo and JP Morgan and credit card operators, American Express and Visa, surged because not only is Trump expected to cut the company tax rate, but he's also expected to cut financial regulations. The prospect of tariffs pushed up stocks like Caterpillar and steelmakers Nucor and Steel Dynamics. Tesla jumped nearly 15%, even though Trump is apparently against electric vehicles because Elon Musk is inside the tent, so Tesla should be a winner. But the biggest winners were private prison operators, Geo Group and Core Civic. The US dollar and the long-term interest rate both went up because the tariffs would be inflationary and delay further rate cuts, although the Fed is expected to announce a 0.25% cut tonight. And there were losers as well. Renewable energy businesses like First Solar and Enphase Energy were dumped, as were copper and silver, because of concerns about the Chinese economy if that 60% tariff goes ahead. The Dow Jones average had its best day in 2 years, up 3.5%. The S&P 500 2.5% and the Nasdaq 1.4%. Surprisingly, the Chinese markets did okay, while shares in Japan and Germany fell. The Australian market went up a bit, with gains by banks and resources stocks offset by falls among retailers and Westpac going ex-dividend. Here's the usual list of commodities. Gold, silver and iron ore down, oil up. And the Australian dollar rose against all the other currencies, including the higher US dollar, and I've got no idea why. and that's finance.
The Kangaroos are seeking redemption in Rugby League's Pacific Cup final against Tonga in Sydney on Sunday. It's a showcase weekend for the Pacific Island teams, especially Papua New Guinea, which wants to emulate Tonga's success.
The Kangaroos are well rested, and now their attention is on the Mate Ma'a.
It's certainly star-studded, that Tongan side, so yeah, it's good. It's good to be a part of.
Tonga's run to the final has galvanised their fans in Western Sydney, with hundreds cheering them on at training.
I imagine it's going to be a sea of red come game time, and that'll help those guys.
And the Kangaroos are feeling the pressure of a home final after choking 30-0 in last year's decider against the Kiwis.
You don't want to let the jersey down. I think we didn't put in the best performance in that final last year, and that's something we don't want to do again.
There's also another fight to join Australia and Tonga in next year's Pacific Cup, with Papua New Guinea taking on New Zealand in the promotion relegation playoff.
I'm sure that we've got a lot of supporters here in Sydney, and we've got a lot of people coming, travelling from Port Moresby as well.
Led by sacked former Rabbitohs coach Jason Demetriou, the Kumals won the Pacific Bowl.
I think it's something we've been building towards for a long time with the Kumals, is to get the opportunity to play in these big games against the big nations.
And the chance to make a statement, with the NRL determined to set up a PNG side in the coming years. Bindi Bryce, ABC News.
The Australian breakdancer Ray Gunn has retired following her highly publicised performance at the Paris Olympics. Rachel Gunn, a Sydney-sider, attracted worldwide attention and ridicule for her efforts in the sport's Olympic debut. Gunn has a PhD in cultural studies and says the reaction to her performance has prompted her to step away from competition.
The level of scrutiny that's going to be there, and people will be filming it, it'll go online, and it's just not going to mean the same thing. It's not going to be the same experience because of everything that's at stake.
Let's take a look at the weather now. And Tom, it was definitely feeling like summer today.
Jeremy, it was hot and humid across the north and east, and that provided the fuel for rain and thunderstorms. The most severe storms hit the Hunter and mid-north coast, although a warning will be cancelled shortly as these storms just move off the east coast. Taree was soaked by 44 millimetres in just 30 minutes. And the storms also generated gusty winds and hail. This was Cessnock at around 3 p.m. On the Sydney radar, just some light patchy rain around tonight. Nothing more than a millimetre or so in the gauges so far. That rain is helping to bring cool relief though. Sydney's low of 21 was the warmest spring night in 4 years. Northwesterly winds then lifted the high to 31. That was 7 above average and our warmest day since March. Western suburbs climbed to 34, as much as 8 degrees above the average. A southerly change then arrived across the east this afternoon, but that change did not push inland, and as a result, well, Penrith is still sitting on 26 this evening. Across the state, last night's minimums were on the muggy side. 26 in Bourke was their warmest since last summer. And the maximums today were as much as 13 above average across the Hunter district, and they climbed up to 40 for parts of the north. Now, on the satellite, we have a band of cloud crossing much of eastern Australia, although rainfall has been minimal in most areas. On the chart, this trough will trigger further showers and storms tomorrow in the state's northeast, while drier westerly winds arrive to the trough's southern flank. Now, around the country, a shower or two ahead for Hobart, Adelaide and Perth, humid with storms on the way for Brisbane. For the northeast tomorrow, a warm day with sunny skies over the Hunter and Western Ranges, humid with a medium chance of showers and thunderstorms for the eastern ranges and the northern coastline. Those storms could be severe across the northern rivers with damaging winds, hail and heavy rain. For the southeast, a cooler night in drier westerly winds, then a sunny day heading for the mid to high 20s along the coast. That's ahead of a southerly change on the south coast in the afternoon, which will reach the Illawarra coast in the evening. To the west, cooler minimums and maximums as winds blow from the southwest. Mostly sunny skies, tops heading for the mid-20s in the south and up to the mid-30s across the north. On the waters, we'll have 30-knot winds off the far north coast and the far south coast, where the seas will average up to 2.5 metres. Now for Sydney, some showers overnight, a slight risk of a storm, clearing before sunrise, then a warm and mostly sunny day. Drier westerly winds to 25 kilometres per hour. Temperature range 17 to 30 for Sydney and also Gosford, heading for 27 in Wollongong and up to 31 in Parramatta and Penrith. Now the sun will rise at 5:48 and set at 7:31 p.m. And ahead, Well, we'll have another southerly change arriving late tomorrow night, and behind it, cooler weather on Saturday with the chance of a shower across the eastern parts of Sydney, tops from 23 to 25 degrees. Mostly cloudy on Sunday with a medium chance of showers for most suburbs, 26 to 28. And then we'll have a spell of humid and showery days next week, tops in the city from 23 to 27. Jeremy?
Tom, thank you. Let's take you over to Sarah Ferguson standing by with 7:30.